Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Rei-Lin and I'm back with some more Armored Warfare. Today I'm going to be talking about a kind of rare tank, the Tier 5 T64 AV Hunter. This tank is kind of rare because they gave it out as kind of a gift tank, sort of like a raffle at one point, and then the only other way that they have generally sold this tank was as part of a package deal that cost a lot of money but got you a lot of premium tanks at the same time. And of course, again, this time, up until patch 2.0 comes out, so up until the 20th, you can buy this tank again as part of a package deal. I really wish they'd move away from the package stuff because it would be nice to be able to buy some of these tanks just individually. But unfortunately, that's not what they're doing. My.com has put this out there as a package deal, and the package basically costs you 12,475 gold. And with that, you get 14 days of premium time, some insignias for boosting your experience, commander and crew, and all of that kind of stuff, a little bit of money. And you also get the Challenger 1 Wolf tank, Tier 7 main battle tank, and the Expeditionary tank, which was a founder pack kind of tank. It's a light tank, Tier 6 premium. And both of those tanks are very good. And I think if you don't own either of those tanks, which most people that's been keeping up with Armored Warfare probably do at this point, but if you don't own them, 12,475 gold isn't too bad. I mean, it's not that great, but it's not that bad. Plus, they also give you this tank, the Tier 5, the T64 AV Hunter, and it's just basically thrown in for free. Now, if you already own the Challenger 1 Wolf and the Expeditionary tank, you're essentially going to get back the gold that the tanks are worth. So in essence, you're not really going to be spending that much gold because you basically get it right back for those tanks. If you were to buy either the Expeditionary tank or the Challenger 1 Wolf separately just to get those tanks, you'd end up basically spending over 13,000 gold. So buying it as part of the package deal with this tank also included saves you about 575 gold. Whether or not you think it's worth it, well, that's just depends completely on if you already own the other two tanks. By itself, I don't really think the T64 Hunter is that great of a tank. It's sort of there to bridge the gap, I think. Maybe that's what they were thinking of it as, between the Tier 4 T64 and the Tier 5 T-72 Ural. And I don't really think it, I mean, I guess in some sense it does, in fact, bridge that gap. But I'm just going to do a really quick comparison between those tanks, just so you can see that statistically, the Hunter's not that great of a tank. So let's bring up the stats. And I'm going to throw up here the T64. Now keep in mind the T64 is a whole tier lower. So overall, the T64 does more damage, but it has less pen, does significantly more damage per minute with a faster reload. It only has about 100 hit health less. And we move on to the armor. Immediately you can see, well, yeah, okay, so the armor isn't quite as good in the front, but it's the same on the side and only slightly worse in the rear. The composition is the same between both tanks. And even the modifiers are the same between both tanks on the hull. Now the turret has obviously a little bit more armor, 320 to 285, but the difference here is the modifiers. With these modifiers on the Hunter, it actually puts it higher than the T64, but only just barely. Because of the modifiers here, you don't actually have 320, it's more like 304, whereas with the modifiers on the Hunter, this is more like 314 millimeters of armor. The same goes basically for the side. This pretty much evens it out to about 263 millimeters, and then it already has 5 millimeters more on the rear, and the modifier is still better. So the turret on the Hunter is better than the T64's turret. But then we keep going down the statistics here, and you see that the T64 is actually faster, which is crazy considering how armored this is for the tier. It is a little bit sluggish, 0 to 32 compared to the Hunter, but not by a whole lot. The whole traverse is slower, but again, by about 5 degrees or so it's not that bad. We don't really care about the camouflage. The view range is identical. The T64 does have a little bit less gun depression than the Hunter, so that's kind of an unusual amount of gun depression for a Russian tank. The accuracy is basically exactly the same between the two. The aim time on the T64 is a little bit worse, and the turret traverse is quite a bit worse. So overall, the Hunter has basically just a lot less mobility and just a little bit more armor and health, much lower DPM and longer load time, not as much damage, but more pin. So you're kind of giving or taking a little bit from the T64. So you could say that the 64 AV Hunter is just a slight upgrade in most of the areas as far as protection goes. But as you can see, this is on a tier 4 tank. This is the T64. So it's tier 4. So these stats aren't bad when you're comparing them to another tier 4, but this is a tier 5. The AV Hunter is a tier 5. So let's see what it does when you compare it straight up with the T-72, the actual tier 5 Russian main battle tank. Here we are with the damage. Obviously, T-72 does more. It has better pin. It has more TPM. The load time, reload time is basically the same. It does get slightly better health. But then you look at the armor here, and the hull, 220, 130, and 40 on the T-72, and then we got 265, 80, 70. That's not too bad when you think about it. But the difference here is that you got the modifiers. The T-72 has much better modifiers, so these values are much higher than they are on the AV Hunter. And even on the turret, you got 375, 175, 120. You just looking at the numbers, they're basically outside of the side of the turret, they're much better on the T-72. But again, the modifiers are higher than on the AV Hunter, so overall the T-72 has better protection, even though the health is almost the same. It's much faster max speed, takes a little bit longer to get from 0 to 32. Hull traverse is slightly better, view range is much worse, gun depression is worse, and the accuracy is better, considering that it's Russian. That's not bad. Aim time is worse, and it's slightly slower on the turret traverse. So when you're looking at these two tanks side by side, for a tier 5, honestly, the AV Hunter is not that bad. It's not that far off. It just doesn't have the typical high damage and penetration that is more or less in just how all the Russian tanks are in armored warfare. They tend to have a lot of damage and have a lot of pen, so thus their damage per minute isn't bad. That's pretty much what the AV Hunter is basically the weakness. It doesn't have that high damage per minute because the reload time is not that great, and the damage that it does isn't that good either. For a tier 5, it's not bad, and the survivability is also not bad, but again, it's the mobility it's really hurt on the mobility, and the gun handling and the resistances on the AV Hunter just seems bad overall. It's very sluggish. And while, main battle tanks are not known to be that maneuverable, the Russians seem to have some of the most maneuverable tanks for main battle tanks in armored warfare because they are so small and they're not quite as heavily armored as some of the other main battle tanks. They make up for it by giving it a little bit of mobility. The AV Hunter, I would say, is pretty much right in between the T-64 at tier 4 and the T-72 at tier 5. So when you look at it, statistically, it's not too bad. And as a bonus tank, it's not too bad. However, my biggest gripe is if you're going to play a tier 5, why not just play the T-72? Overall, it's going to be a little bit better. It does have the damage that the Russian tanks are known for. It has pretty good penetration, although it's still not that far off. And it has a little bit more health, but it has a lot more armor and goes a lot faster. So, again, it's a give and take. It's not supposed to be a better tank. But a lot of the tanks, I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but in armored warfare, a lot of the premium tanks seem to me to be just palette swaps of other tanks. Like, I almost expected the AV Hunter just to be a T-64 with a flashy paint job. And it's surprising that it actually isn't, because a lot of the tanks that are premium tanks generally are just a reskinned version of a normal tank. In World of Tanks, however, a lot of tanks that are premium tanks are usually kind of a mid in between two different tiers of tanks, or maybe it's a completely separate tank that just ends up doing very well. There are some tanks in World of Tanks where the premium tanks are in general better. For example, the Type 59 was basically one of the best medium tanks in the game, despite all the nerfs that Wargaming's done to it. Whereas this, it seems to me, as a bonus tank and as a tank they just kind of gave away, um, as a giveaway tank and just a bonus on top of buying a couple of other decent premium tanks, I don't think that it's a bad tank. The problem is, again, is you can't buy it separately. You have to buy a package deal to get it. Now, this package deal I think is a much better choice when you compare it to previous package deals where they included this tank if you paid like $300, even though you got like 40 freaking tanks in the deal. I mean, that's a lot of money to get all these premium tanks that by now most people have probably kept up with the game. They don't release premium tanks often enough in Armored Warfare to really break the bank at this point. I mean, they had a lot at the beginning and now it seems to have slowed down. So keeping up with the premium tanks in Armored Warfare isn't that big a deal. You pay $30 for a tank every 4 or 5 months, and that's not too bad. And again, this is another tank that's not too bad, but it's not that great. However, if you don't own the Challenger 1 Wolf and the Expeditionary Tank, this, I think, would be a good deal. Or if you're a tank collector, it would be a good deal. If you already own those two tanks, you're not going to lose a lot of gold simply because you're going to receive that value of the tank in gold immediately, but since you already own it. And so at the end of the day, as long as you have the 12,465 gold to spend on the package, you're going to get the majority of it back, and it'll be cheaper than if you bought the Challenge 1 Wolf or the Expeditionary Tank separately. So overall, it's not a bad deal, but with the Balance Patch 2.0 coming out and all the changes they're making to every system in the game, from the ballistics to how the armor works to more realistic tank physics and armor layouts, I'm not sure if this tank is going to hold up that well. Even though it is premium and it's not necessarily a bad tank, it may not hold up very well to the revamped system. Until it comes out and we get some playtime, it's going to be really hard to second guess how things will play out. A lot of these premium tanks that I've already done reviews on might change drastically for the better or the worse. So at this point, if you don't have the Challenger 1 and you don't have the Expeditionary Tank, I think it'd be a good deal, especially if you like those styles of tanks. If you like playing main battle tanks and you like playing light tanks, both of the tanks in the package are very good. This is just another Russian main battle tank. It's not that different from a T64 or a T-72. It's kind of in between the two as far as armor and mobility and firepower. So it's just whether or not you like the Russian tanks enough that you want another Russian tank. Overall, I would say, again, I wouldn't buy the package just to get this tank. I don't think that's worth it. I think the Challenger 1 Wolf by itself is a good deal. I really like the Expeditionary Tank. It's a very good light tank and a lot of fun. So if you like both of those play styles and you just like having those paint jobs, go for it. Otherwise, I would pass and maybe just wait, because they're making this like this AV Hunter tank is some super rare thing, and it is a super rare tank, but it's not on the caliber that you might think of like the Type 59 from World of Tanks, where that was a super rare tank because it was so overpowered that they had to take it off the shop, and they've sworn never to sell it again, which they haven't. And so as far as a giveaway tank and a bonus tank to throw onto a deal like they are right now on the website, I don't think it's bad, but ultimately it comes down to your personal choice. But it is a premium tank, and it does come with a fully fleshed out, as you can see down here, level 5 crew. The only other thing I could say about the tank is that it does have a severe lack of retrofit slots. You only get 2. One is universal, and one is surprisingly for mobility. It seems very un-Russian to throw in a mobility when really it just needs firepower and penetration. So I'm not really going to go over my setup with this. Again, it's just the same as every other tank as far as the commander and the crew. The skills are exactly the same. Anyway, I'm going to give you a nice little replay. It's mainly just me driving around, testing out the mobility. It's one of the first few games I played in the tank. There's a lot of things that I did wrong. I haven't been on that particular map for a while, so I apologize for the mistakes, but it was basically me seeing how good or bad this tank was from the mobility standpoint once I saw that it only could go up to about 50 kilometers an hour. So, I hope you enjoy it. I'll see you on the battlefield. And here we are on the map called Albatross. This is kind of a map that I didn't have a lot of experience with, but I could see where the secondary objectives were, and it looked like it'd be a lot of driving around the map. At first, I just decided I might as well just move up with everyone else. This is on hard mode, so we do have an XM1 on our team, so he's going to be the guy that I'm going to want to sit behind, and hopefully he'll be able to tank everything. But you can just see right out of the gate that the mobility on this thing isn't exactly the best. I mean, the XM1 was just leaving me behind, even though I'm on basically a hard surface on a road. And he doesn't seem to have any trouble just moving around the battlefield already, just pushing in and taking out the enemy tanks. I decided to go ahead and push up. I just don't know what to expect because, like I said, I haven't had much experience on this map. So again, I apologize for the noobness. But it was mainly just to see the mobility on this tank and hopefully get kind of stuck in and see if I could take any damage or dish any damage. I wanted to face hug our favorite friends, the Stingrays, because, well, I might as well test the armor on the turret, considering that is the best armor on the tank. I ricochet there. Again, this is Russian accuracy in armored warfare. Even though it looks like it's pretty accurate, the shots do tend to not go exactly where I'm aiming. You'll see a better example later on in the video where I thought I had it and then it didn't go where I wanted it. Even with the penetration that I have, I don't really have the accuracy to be making shots from long distance. So unfortunately, you're not going to want to sit here the way I am, too far in the back and be aiming at weak points on tanks. I would push up, but again, I'm not exactly the heavy tank here. I am somewhat armored, and I'm pretty sure I could take most of the shots, but because I don't really have that much mobility, as you can see, I've topped out right there at 50, even going downhill. But again, I don't really want to push straight up because I don't know what to expect yet. I don't really want to push too far up and end up exposing my sides or my rear to enemy tanks. These might be bots, but they don't waste much time in shooting the living crap out of you if you overextend yourself. Now, at this point, I knew what I wanted to do, and I wanted to go over and down to like the F8 area and get the secondary objective. So I thought, well, I might as well go. Even though I'm hardly the fastest of the group, I figured, well, there is a road here. It's a hard surface. Generally, I can go okay on the hard surface. But I decided, well, I might as well go off-road while I'm heading that way, A, to cut some of the travel time out, and then B, just to see if this thing has the acceleration to kind of go uphill. Now, I am going at 30 kilometers an hour, which isn't bad, but in most other main battle tanks, especially the Russian line, you would probably be up to 35, 36 kilometers an hour doing that same thing. And then once I get over here and notice that, okay, it's going downhill and on a road, I wanted to push it and see just what I could get the tank to do. So you see we're at 50, and I'm basically maxed out. It's like the gearing on the tank will not let me go over 50 kilometers an hour. So as an actual maximum speed, it literally is a maximum speed. So now we're going to get stuck in here with some autoloaders attacking me. You can see the painfully long reload at over 10 seconds. The DPM on this tank is terrible, so getting stuck in like this is not a good idea. You cannot really shoot your way out of trouble. You do have the good pin, but you're not doing as much damage as most Russian tanks shot for shot. So you see it's going to take me 3 or 4 shots to kill that guy. And so he takes off. Again, I ricochet. The shot didn't go exactly where I wanted it. And now we got artillery, our favorite type of tank, coming in to the picture to lay waste to me. We got a Terminator, trying to deal with him. Thankfully, I do have somebody that's got my back, but he's not in a position there to help as much as I would have liked him to. So you see I'm already down to a quarter of my health. Artillery did hit me once again, and there's really nothing I can do about it. So I just kind of push forward. And I was thinking maybe I should heal here because I am down to a quarter health, but I don't think that I could get one shot by anything, including artillery, as long as I'm careful. And we're just going to take out the secondary objective because, well, it's worth a lot of experience. A lot of experience and credits when you take out all of the secondary objectives. Thankfully, I've got a friend with me to help destroy all this stuff, so I don't have to waste a lot of ammo and use that long reload time to just sit there and twiddle my thumbs. There's our friend the Artie. Doesn't he look just so happy sitting there, destroying our team little by little? I was requesting fire because of my long reload. I just didn't want to sit here for the full 10 seconds and let artillery batter my friends to death. And I hoped that if I just called out, hey, somebody please kill this guy, that they would respond in kind and take him out, which they did. So thankfully, people are paying attention. Now there's the Expeditionary Tank, 2 of them in fact, and you see I almost flubbed that shot. It almost would have bounced off the front end of the angle on that tank. But Russian accuracy, bam, side of the tank, not really going to miss on the side. But that was one of the tanks you get in the package deal along with this tank, the Expeditionary Tank. It didn't really get a chance to shine, but usually the AI versions of the Expeditionary Tanks can lay waste to you quite quickly. They seem to have very good penetration and accuracy, but thankfully I was outside their range and they weren't focused on me. Look at that aim circle. It does take a while to aim this tank. It takes a while to reload. So you need to make sure that you're at least putting that penetration to good work. You don't want to be missing too many shots. Again, you're not going to use this tank to be the front line battering ram of the group. You kind of need to hang about mid-range if you can to put your good penetration to work, and that kind of bad Russian accuracy, you got to work with it. I mean, if you can get the sides and rears of big fat tanks, that's what you want to do. You don't want to be sniping for much of the weak points. And you really don't want to go toe-to-toe with too many tanks either, just because you really don't have that great of armor. It is better than a T64, no doubt, but at the end of the day, you're still very vulnerable to tanks penetrating you, especially in the lower front plate and in the sides. Just moving along here, trying to take a few shots. I really don't want to cross the runway here because, well, there's a bunch of enemy tanks down there, and I am spotted. I decided I might as well try to help out across there before I start crossing, because I want those enemy tanks to focus on my team and not on me, because I'm obviously giving my side. I could have been a little bit more cautious and circled way out and around, but this tank doesn't have the mobility for it. Again, that's pretty much what I'm testing here. I know my tanks are getting kind of battered over there. We just lost 2 people in very quick succession. But this isn't about necessarily doing the same thing as every other kind of map. You just kind of want to hold them off. And as long as somebody resets, we were going to be all right. And now we still got 3 of us, and there is a T-72. So I know his reload is good, and I know he does some good damage. But I wanted to secure these secondary objectives because, well, no one else is going to do it. And I might as well get in there and do it. Now, you might say, well, that's kind of a dick move. If I had wasted my time over here doing this, and we could have lost, because you can see that the capture rate here got up there pretty good, but somebody did reset, and I'm really not that far away. I'm basically just around this corner from my team, and now I can come in around the backside of all these enemy tanks and flank them, and that was pretty much exactly what I was thinking. I'm going to come around here, get the fat asses of a lot of these tanks, and just start shooting them full of holes. And I aim, and I aim, and I aim. Now watch this shot. Boo! Went right between the gun and the top of the hull. I mean, it even gives me the, hey, learn to aim, noob, warning there on the screen. Well, I was completely aimed, but even completely aimed, that circle isn't exactly that small. Second shot does hit home, but hey, we ended up winning because they couldn't capture in the time limit. So that was a very quick example of this tank, the T64, and exactly what it can or cannot do. It is not a very mobile machine, and it's not very armored enough to where you're going to sit there and be able to take the brunt of enemy attacks. It does have pretty good armor, but again, it is a low-tier tank. It doesn't have the mobility to get somewhere fast, and that's not a bad thing, but you're not going to sit there and take very much punishment. You're really going to have to angle this tank more than the normal Armored Warfare version of main battle tanks, where they kind of just sit straight on and tank with their face, essentially. It's more of a World of Tanks where you're going to have to angle that front upper plate and not show them much of your lower front plate, and you're not going to want to show the cupolas, which are weak points on most of the Russian tanks. This one is no exception. Now, you do have better modifiers than a T-64, but you don't have the damage of a T-72. you're sort of right in between the two. With the long reload, you're not going to shoot your way out of trouble, and even though that kind of sucks, you know, it's not the end of the world. As far as everything else goes, the tank isn't bad. It is a mid-tier, you know, out of the 10 tiers, it's a tier 5. But it's ultimately down to you, the individual. I don't think it's worth buying as an individual tank unless the price was pretty low. I'm talking maybe 2,500 to 3,000 gold, so maybe $10. When you're getting up to 12,000 and more gold, you know, you're talking $60, $65 worth of gold. Now, granted, like I said, if you already own the Challenger Wolf tank and you already own the Expeditionary tank, it's not a bad deal because you're going to get that gold basically right back in your pocket, and you get the Hunter AV here for free. It's in your garage and you can play around with it and have fun or not. But overall, I don't think the tank is necessarily worth getting too excited about. But again, with the balance patch 2.0, that might change, and this tank might become one of the more powerful tier 5 premiums in the game. It might be as overpowered as Wargaming's own Type 59. It's hard to say. But as soon as the patch hits and I get to spend a little more time with all the mechanics that are going to be changing, I'll definitely be making some more videos to see if anything has gone up or down in value as far as premium tanks go. But as far as this tank goes, again, if you're a tank collector, yeah, you could probably get it. You're not going to be losing a lot of gold, as I said, because you probably already own the other two tanks. If you don't own the other two tanks, I still think that that's a good deal for those two tanks, and also getting this tank thrown in as a bonus, along with extra premium days, some credits, and the unlocks for insignias for, you know, commander and crew experience boosts and things like that. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I just wanted to make this known that there is this deal, and if you have been waiting to get your hands on the T64 AV Hunter, it is now available. The package deal for once isn't going to cost you an arm and a leg, and it's not a bad tank. Just don't expect miracles with it. If you enjoyed this video, if I helped you out, please press the like button down below. It does help out my channel. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe to my channel, you can click at the bottom of your screen right now, and that'll get you all the latest updates every time I upload something new to my channel. Thanks a lot, everybody. Take care, and I'll talk to you all next time.